Kia ora, everybody. My name is Georgina. I'm the ACE RMO consultant. Welcome to the ACE RMO 2024 Auckland Region webinar. We're going to start off with the opening karakia, and then I'll give everyone a brief outline of today's webinar. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. So thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar. We'll move on to the panelist introductions very shortly. Then we have an exciting video for you all to watch, and this is followed by a presentation presented by our panelists. Then our RMO representative will tell you a bit more about their experience working as a PGY1 at Auckland Region. Towards the end of the webinar, we're going to have a live Q&A session, and then we'll finally close with a closing karakia. Just a reminder, all questions can be dropped in the Q&A box below your screen. So you can do this throughout the webinar, but the questions will only be answered towards the end of the session.
Hi everybody, my name's Dan Sefa-Weaver. I'm one of the recruitment allocation consultants that works across the region, working in the house officer portfolio.
My name is Shirley and I'm the recruitment and allocations team leader, and I work with Dan and also Ada, who will introduce herself later.
Hello everybody, my name is Ada, one of the recruitment and allocation consultant that looks after house officer recruitment.
Hi everyone, I'm Melinda. Apologies for the lack of visibility on the screen today, technical as always. I'm an RMO daily operations advisor, and I look after portfolios at both Auckland Hospital and also at North Shore Hospital.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Anthony. I'm one of the PGY1 house officers. I'm currently working at Auckland City Hospital.
Kia ora, I'm Laura Chapman. I'm an SMO, a senior doctor at Waitemata at North Shore Hospital, and the Director of Clinical Training, which means that I look after the training and employment for all the first and the second year doctors. So really excited to meet you. You should all come and work across Metro Auckland. It's a fantastic place. Over to you, Chris.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm a respiratory physician. I'm the Director of House Officer Training at Auckland City Hospital to Toka Tūmai. Yeah, echo everything Laura has said, and welcome.
Cool, thank you everybody and welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play the exciting video.
Hi, I'm Maxine. I chose to work in Auckland for many reasons. Firstly, I had great experiences as a student here and found the teaching was always of such good quality. I also loved that there were so many subspecialties to choose from and try out at a lower house officer level. Outside of the hospital, it meant I could keep up my sport at a high level, which was really important to me. And I had a great support network up here too. In Auckland, there is a large range of subspecialties to choose from. Last year, I was lucky enough to do both urology and cardiology as a first year, which are both very valuable and fascinating runs. You were very well supported within the hospital and with other registrars and seniors either around or contactable at all times. There's also so much to do socially outside the hospital, which I think is really important to consider. Yeah, so it's busy, but a good busy. I think there's always lots going on, lots of patients to see and things to do and be exposed to. I feel like I've seen a lot of procedures, and whether that's been, you know, in or out of theatre and interventional, the side of medicine as well. And as I was saying earlier, there's also lots of support from seniors as well. So it's not too often that you feel like there's not someone around you can call or go and approach to ask any questions, which I found really helpful. Yeah.
Great, I hope everybody enjoyed that. We'll now move on to the presentation.
Hi there. Firstly, we're going to get things started with Anthony, and we'll go through his reasoning for ranking the Auckland region.
So hey everyone, I hope you guys can hear me okay. Just changed computers. So essentially why I chose the Auckland region, there's a number of factors. Primarily my family live in Auckland, so it's always really good when you're starting sort of a new step in your life to have some really good support. So I wanted to stay near friends and family, which is why I chose Auckland. It's where I did med school. But in addition to that, just there's a lot of diversity in Auckland. A lot of people frame it as this one city culture that's all really hustle bustle and not much fun. But actually, you know, you can find if you're looking in the right places, there's good outdoor entertainment just, you know, within an hour's drive away. There's, you know, always something interesting going on in the city. And you get the bonus of having sort of the campus nearby that if you did go to Auckland, you can go like back and, you know, interact with other students, other faculty. It's a really good place to engage in some really good research. And yes, it is busy and it's one of the busiest centers within our country, but I think it provides an amazing opportunity for really good learning, and there's such amazing support around from all the senior staff and even the colleagues and medical students below your level as well. It's just, yeah, I couldn't get enough of it as a student, so I wanted to stay, and here I am.
Cool. Thanks, Anthony. If we can go on to Melinda. And Melinda, can you just explain what support we offer those that are transitioning into PGY1 positions?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Okay, again, so I'm Melinda, Daily Operations Advisor based out of Auckland Hospital primarily. And at the moment I look after the Obs and Gynae, NICU and Paediatrics portfolios at Auckland and Obs and Gynae at North Shore. So essentially the RMO support unit is an administrative service for RMOs, and we provide a link between you, the RMO, to Whanau, Northern Regional Central Office and the individual services within the hospitals. As a team, we aim to provide support, guidance and clarity on a variety of issues such as rosters, leave entitlements, payroll, just general admin inquiries. We're kind of like your go-to, I guess, and we really encourage you to rely heavily on your RMO support units and advisors. Just right from the get-go, we're here for you. We're here to ease your transition into your first year in the hospitals. It is a big deal for you guys. It's exciting, but yeah, we're here very much to answer questions and to help you through. One of the first things we do for you, if you select Auckland, which I'm sure you're all very excited to do so, is we actively encourage you to submit leave requests so that we can lock away leave for you in that first year. It's just really important to ensure that you have that leave and it's spaced out nicely, just to give you that break and to recharge the batteries. So what would happen is we would send out an email to you all once the leave kiosk from our side is open, and we encourage you to send through your requested dates, and then we can put those through for you. You will have access to an online leave kiosk, but that doesn't occur until your very first pay, which is about 2 weeks into your quarter, your first quarter. In addition to that, we also run a buddy system for our PGY1s, which we have found it's really, really helpful, and it's good for both our PGY2s who have been in your shoes previously, and just being able to have that support from people who know exactly what you're feeling and going through. So what happens is that we ensure that you don't have any after our shifts in the first 2 weeks without having a PGY2 RMO along with you. And also for your first admitting duties also. Also, we don't roster you to any night duties during your first quarter, so for the first 3 months. This really just helps you to sort of ease in, find your way around, find your feet, and really prepare you for, I guess, hitting the ground for quarter 2 and beyond. But yeah, all I can say is just, yeah, really do know that the RMO support units are there for you, and we actively want to engage with you and just really ensure that your time with the Auckland region is super beneficial, super enjoyable, and just really, really what you hope to looking for at the start of your career.
Just going to jump in and say, yeah, the directors of training, Laura, myself, and Lou Finnell at Counties Manukau are also very involved in this process, along with our education teams. We all of the 3 districts of Auckland run a 1-week orientation program as well, with many different components. Yeah, meeting the second years, sessions on really critical things like ward calls, death certification, things that sometimes stress first years out. So I would emphasize what Melinda's just said. We try to be really well organized in terms of organising a really good transition orientation program for interns.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Ada, can you take us through the recruitment process, please?
Again, hello everybody, my name is Ada. So just a bit of process in regards to the recruitment process. So we receive your application through the ACE process. So please make sure you put an application through the ACE process where you will need to provide a cover letter. So that cover letter, you only need to provide one cover letter that covers all the 3 districts, Auckland, Waitemata, and counties Manukau. You will also need to provide a CV using the ACE template, which will include for you to write a personal statement, academic achievement, and I guess prizes and award that you have received. Also, lastly, to provide references, we recommend 3 references. So 1 from current and 1 from previous and 1 from prior to that. In the Auckland region, once we receive your ACE application, we go through what we call the ACE scoring / ranking day. And this is done by the Pre-Vocational Training Committee / PVTC. All applications go through the PVTC, and the ranking process is undertaken via the fit for purpose model, which Chris will touch base on on the next slide. So once the scoring is completed by the PVTC, it is returned to the ACE team. Then an algorithm happens in the background where RMOs matched and offer goes out to those who are successful. So I guess, yeah, main thing is please make sure you put your application in through the ACE process, have a cover letter and CV, and all instructions are there on the link. But other than that, happy to help with anything, of any questions.
Auckland employs nearly 2 out of 5 of the new graduates across the country. So we need a diverse range of people. We want people who want to work in the community. We want people who are dedicated to being total subspecialists. You can score really well if you use your personal life experience. You don't have to be an academic high flyer. That's absolutely not the only thing we look for. We look for a range of colleagues. We don't want to recruit clones because that would weaken the health system. We want to recruit a diverse group of people who can respectfully disagree with each other and grow together so that we can have a system that is pushing the boundaries on all levels for the patients that we all serve. So please, if you've got prior life experience, put it in. So there are lots of different things that we look for. So let your personality and your experience and what you bring sing out. That's really important to us. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. If you can please go through the selection criteria.
Yeah, so we just need the next slide, please. And I think that will show, yeah, this is a very busy slide, and I dare say many of you can't read it. So please don't worry about the fine print too much. This is available in the selection and allocation policy for the Auckland region. The NRA team will be able to talk about the website. I think what I would emphasize here is that there are really 5 domains we look at. So this is the part outside of the ACE process, which is the part that the Pre-Vocational Training Committee do. But please note that there are personal strengths as a domain and also professional and team approach as a domain, as well as academic performance and achievement and clinical performance. I would note that academic performance, we're not talking about straight A's, we're talking about all sorts of stuff here. Prior achievement outside medicine, any prizes or papers or interesting studies you might have been involved in, and also have you managed to achieve in those domains despite having potentially struggles. So overcoming adversity is something that's very important in house officers. We do want to hear about what you do outside work. Like Laura says, we find that really both very interesting and also very insightful about how things may play out as doctors. And then the very important domain we've introduced this year is about equity and cultural safety. So this will give all of you the opportunity, all of us from all ethnicities, to demonstrate a knowledge of Hawara Māori and cultural competence and cultural safety in our engagement with those. And so I know many of you do this already, but that is something to pay some attention to on your application as well, as it will be looked at by the group. We have a group of kaitiaki in Auckland, so senior doctors who are in positions where they're dedicated to looking after and providing mentorship, guardianship for interns of Maori and Pacific descent, and they will be involved in the assessment of that domain as well.
Our commonest thing that I think Chris, I and Shirley would say is that people don't let themselves come out enough in their application forms. They write fairly bland application forms, and actually putting a bit of your personality and owning it often works really well in your favour.
I agree. You would be surprised what things you may not think are a strength that we would find a strength. And I think anything in particular, I think things you've done at school, things you've done at university, leadership positions, but also anything you've done outside work that is a major achievement or shows that you've overcome some form of adversity or some challenges in life, because you'll certainly get plenty of those as doctors. So yeah, pop those into your cover letter and CV, as well as, of course, having good references and a good track record of clinical performance helps as well.
Thanks, Chris and Laura. We'll move on to Shirley now, and she'll go through allocations.
Cool. So I'll be taking you guys through the allocation process. So once you have been offered and you've accepted your offer, we'll send you a survey. And in that survey, there'll be all the run blocks for the region that you've been matched to. So you can choose up to 10 run preferences. And once we get all that information, we put all that into an algorithm, and that will match your run block for the 2025 training year. And this will be sent to you in October. That is the regional date for all allocations, so whether or not you're PGY2 or PGY1. So, we've got 2 slides, and those slides go over what allocations we offer PGY1s and also PGY2+. So at a PGY1 level, these are our approved positions. You can see that we've got quite a few specialties that are available for PGY1s that aren't in other regions, because we do have 3 tertiary hospitals, so that's one of the bonuses here. So as you can see, there are a lot more positions available for our PGY2+. Included in that, specifically for PGY2s, is community-based attachments. And we've also got some specialties like ICU, HDU, and ONG and paediatric subspecialties.
Most of our trainees do stay for 2 years in Auckland. Most people like it enough that they stick around. Everybody does their first year in the same hospital. We try to give a broad range of runs. There are some which are deemed as PGY2 specific runs, but really we're trying to broaden the range of runs you can do in PGY1 as well. We think that probably the only things that are truly PGY2 runs are relief runs, community-based attachments, and some really kind of high-level stuff you can see there, like neonates and neurosurgery. But yeah, there's a really broad range of runs. Probably the most specialised hospital would be Auckland Tokotumai, but you can see you get a very wide range of experience at all 3 hospitals. And I would say in PGY2, most of our interns do move around between at least 2 out of the 3 hospitals. And that further diversifies the experience that they get, because as you'll all know, Auckland covers a huge catchment area right down from Wellsford in the north, where there is in fact a community-based GP attachment, right down to counties Manukau. And
thanks, Chris. As ever, I would agree. The 3 directors of clinical training across the 3 major Auckland sites, that's counties Manukau, Tokotumai and Waitemata, we all work closely together. And so we often agree, but the reason for that is because you do first year at one site. So you might come to North Shore and Waitakere to do first year, and then everybody moves at PGY2 level, which I think is a great bonus for coming to Auckland, because you have a solid place to start your career, but then in second year you can move across the sites and get a different flavour of different hospitals, which I think most people enjoy. The other thing I would say about our jobs is that everybody gets a very broad first year. We try and make sure that people get their feet under the table before we do second year. And you can choose your own second year, whether you're going to focus on a particular area or whether you're going to stay with general speciality training, or whether you're going to pick off one speciality in particular and do as much as possible there. So because of the size of Auckland and the number of jobs that we've got, there is pretty much something to suit everyone, unless of course you want to live rurally straight from the off, and that is a bit tougher to answer in Auckland. But I would argue that if you want to work rurally, you do really well to come to an urban place at the beginning and then move out. Conversely, that's why we think everybody should do community attachments as well. So the Medical Council says that one of your attachments must be in the community. So when you come here, just like any other district, one of your 8 runs will be in the community. But we have quite a variety of community runs, from working in a GP to, like, one of mine is a joint run between one of New Zealand's high security prisons and emergency medicine. So there's a lot of variety. We've got one temporarily paused at the City Mission for our community run. And we think that's really useful, not just for people who want to be GPs, but also hospital specialists, so they can understand what happens in the community and how healthcare is a spectrum between all of those places. So I think Auckland offers that, particularly because Auckland City Hospital is, quaternary referral for New Zealand. There are some things that are only available at Auckland City. I don't like to praise it too much, and Lou, who's from Counties Manukau, would like to make sure that, Counties and Waitemata get a good shout, but Auckland does have some stuff that we don't have. But we also have some better stuff than them, including a great lakeside location. So anyway, I have to talk about teaching and training and learning. And so I think the most important thing to say about this is that all 3 Metro Auckland sites put a huge amount of store by training the future healthcare professionals of New Zealand, both at undergraduate level and at postgraduate level as new doctors, and all the way through your careers. We have a really big responsibility in Auckland because we're not just training for Auckland, we're training for New Zealand. So it's really important that we get the training right. And that's also why there are directors of clinical training, because there are so many house officers. We need to get this right for everybody. And then in addition, throughout your first 2 years, we run a formal teaching program. So all our first year house officers do an hour a week. And you come, you join in, you meet your colleagues. It's a great opportunity to socialise. And we try really hard not to do that by Zoom, because we firmly believe that you all need to meet each other much more than you do anybody else. But you meet each other, you meet the teachers, you meet the education fellows at those sessions. And all of that is learning how to be a professional, and us helping you, and us all keeping an eye on each other. As you get more senior, we do more procedural workshops in PGY2. We cover the things that people find most anxiety provoking clinically, like how do I respond to chest pain out of hours? What shall I do with someone whose oxygen saturations have dropped? But we also build in career planning, how to manage mistakes, what does the legal advisor do in a hospital, and the ever important skill of prescribing. All of us introduce teaching in some way, shape or form about the acutely deteriorating patient, because we recognise, firstly, how important it is for good patient care, and secondly, how stressful most first-year doctors find it. So there's a lot of emphasis on both teaching you how to manage with the most stressful parts of the job, and also making sure that you can do it as well as possible. When you are in Auckland, you get a clinical supervisor for each of your runs. So every 3 months, you'll have an SMO, so a senior doctor who's your clinical supervisor. But you also get an educational supervisor who's yours for 2 years, and they make sure you meet your training requirements. But they're also there for pastoral care, career advice, and I have my 10 and they have my phone number, and they can text me anytime. And I'll help them out if there's an issue. So I think Auckland is a great place to come and start your career for the reasons that Anthony said. There's so many different opportunities, and we want you to be many different kinds of doctors. There's obviously great coffee, there's great food. Certainly on the North Shore, there's great lakes and beaches. I can't speak to you about the other places. But there's also research opportunities, fellow opportunities to learn how to educate your colleagues, opportunities to get involved in management and running the department. And we really try and grow people who are enthusiastic. I'm totally enthused about Auckland as a training site, as you can probably tell. But Chris, Lou and I, with Shirley in the NRA's help. Try really hard to make it a good place to work.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, Laura. Actually, I wonder if Anthony's got any comments about the program so far and about orientation.
Comments about the program so far. So orientation week is not to be missed. You make a lot of friends, but also you get very well accustomed to how the hospital runs. There's a lot of admin and paperwork that needs sorting when you start working at the hospitals, and there's a lot to have to pick up. Like even things like ordering basic blood tests you might not have done necessarily at the hospital that you get in to as a student. So it's really good for that. And the teaching program is great. It happens weekly now on Tuesdays. It's a good place for all our house officers to get together and catch up on how we're doing. And it's really, really helpful. So, yeah, loving the teaching program so far.
And I'd mention we are very aware, both the training directors and the interns, that many people do join us from Otago and may have a slightly smaller cohort. So we do make quite a bit of effort during orientation week and beyond to get the Otago grads to introduce to their Auckland colleagues and get everybody chatting to each other. If we can, we try to have a social event during orientation week. We think that's a really important part of the onboarding process to make sure everybody gets to know each other.
So I would have to say that I think the free RMO meals are probably the biggest driver of people getting to know each other and support groups, because it means people tend to go to their canteen or whatever site they're working to get food and drink. I don't know what you think, Anthony.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's, those lunch times where you spend eating, it's actually when you get to know your team members and even sort of the doctors working above you at registrar level. You can ask how someone's doing on the ward round, but you don't actually have enough time to really get to know them when you're having patients left, right, center, requiring your focus. So yeah, definitely the free lunches, I don't find as a scam. I probably scam back the other way with how much I'm getting from the canteen.
You'll even find that you get to know some of the surgical consultants over a late breakfast at some of the hospitals as well.
Thanks, guys. We've received a couple of questions already, and our lovely SMOs, Laura and Chris, have already answered a couple. So if you want to have a look at them, click on the Q&A box below and you can see them in the Answered tab. So we'll try our best to keep answering your questions throughout the webinar.
Cool. I think we'll move on to Anthony again for the typical day of an RMO.
Typical day. This is going to depend greatly between specialties, but essentially your role as a house officer is to do tidying up around the edges. So in the morning, you'll start the day with a ward round, usually going around with either the registrar or consultant, and you tend to see every patient under your team, and your role is to make sure that the plans are well documented, that the patients get clinically monitored throughout the day, and that those plans essentially are undertaken. We do a lot of paperwork as PGY1 and PGY2 house officers, or house officers in general. So work on your typing speeds and your writing speeds. And a lot of it is usually based on our registrar consultants making decisions and a lot of them sort of coming up with a clinical judgment, but it's always really important and a really good learning opportunity at every moment to ask about sort of clarifying what's going on, indications or diagnosis. It's really good for your learning, even though it might seem a little bit tedious. After the ward round, you kind of, depending on how much time you have, there's always time for a team coffee, even when there isn't. And then you sort of break off into teams with either the registrar or on your own or with another house officer to run through jobs for the day. So that's ordering scans, following up bloods, working on discharges. You break for lunch pretty much when you want. And some other teams have meetings in between the day that are good to attend to with the multidisciplinary teams. And then there's other departmental meetings that depend on the specialty that you're working under. And then if you're on a good day where you don't have to work the evening shifts, you pretty much tidy up and prepare for the next day by just making sure there are plans for overnight for each patient, and then you go on off home and you don't have to think about any assignments, unlike in medical school where there's always something hanging over your head. And you go and live life for about 8 or 9 hours and then you're back the next morning. On a long day though, it can depending on whether you're on medicine or surgery, but essentially you get a phone to hold, where you essentially mop up jobs that have been left over from the day, just kind of stabilize people overnight. And if you're at Auckland City Hospital, then you just do a lot of recharting. But it's good for the learning, as painful as it can be. You'll know your paracetamol dosing very well. The on-call shifts, that's probably the most scary but exciting as a new doctor, because it's where you learn to make your own clinical judgment, and when you get to figure out when things are appropriate to escalate versus what you can manage on your own. So that's sort of what a day looks like. Surgery tends to start a little bit earlier, sort of roster time is 7:30. We tend to come in at about 7 just to prep things for the day. And on a good day, you get off early, about 3:30. Sometimes it pushes a little bit later. On medicine, we tend to start around 8 o'clock and go to about 4 or 5 as well, workload dependent. And then the on-call shifts go until 10 for both specialties. And then weekends depend. As PGY1s, we tend to only have 2 to 3 weekends per quarter from what I've seen. Depends on what specialties you've done first. So a lot of people who have done Gen Med earlier in the year would get rostered on for nights as well, more often than those who haven't, from what I've seen, at least in the first 6 months. So that's sort of the rough day-to-day job as a house officer. It's good fun. It's hard to start, and it takes a lot of getting used to because, there's a lot of patience, there's a lot of responsibility that's now yours, and there's a lot of things for you to chase and think about. But it definitely is a rewarding time and a big learning curve, but definitely one that feels worthwhile once you get over that initial fear.
Cool, thanks, Anthony. Got a question here, which I believe Laura is answering. Are you paid for the half an hour of prep time?
On the rosters that we get, there is a degree of unrostered hours assigned, and that's to do sort of the tidy up work sort of before or after the day actually starts. It counts as some sort of like unpaid overtime, and shouldn't go over that amount of time. So technically yes and no, but it's depending on you and the team. Some teams have an expectation for it, some teams don't. But it also depends on how easy or rough you want your morning to go in terms of how prepared you are for it.
And I'll chip in on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, because I absolutely think it's a debate about the culture of a department and their expectations, but it's also about the culture and expectations amongst the junior doctors. So some people are super keen in some specialities, so will always come in extra early to make a really good impression on their boss. They will always stay late to tidy up everything because that's where they want to be. They're really enjoying themselves and it's their future career. And we don't pay them for those extra hours, and yet it does make them like a super good house officer to have as the consultant. So you can laugh, Anthony, but it's true. And there'll be some people who really don't enjoy the job, so turn up and do the bare minimum. They're still professional, they're still doing their job, but they don't actually want to put in the extras. And so the pay is always a balance. It's not a clock in, clock out kind of a job. There will be times when you start early and then you end up finishing really late because something happens that is unavoidable and it impacts on your free time. I was on annual leave a couple of weeks ago and something came up that really only I could help with. So I gave up a day of my annual leave, logged in at home, sorted it all out. because it was simpler. I'm not saying that's a choice that as a house officer you should make, leave is leave, but there, you know, it's not a job where you should expect to necessarily finish on time. But we do aim to be a reasonable employer. We aim, like Chris and I, really try hard. If the hours that you're paid for just are wildly out of sync with the job, then we would try and get those adjusted. The contracts allow you to have a run review so that things become more reasonable. That's really tricky if you're the place where it starts to become unreasonable, because you're not the one who gets rewarded for the run review. It's often the people further down the line. But we're not trying to milk people for extra work, but neither are we trying to be absolutely precise on every hour that you do work or to pay you more than you do. So it's absolutely a balance, but you've got to remember that people will approach the job differently. Anthony, you know, I know that's easy for me to say, but I hope that's a reasonable representation.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is reasonable. Yeah, some people are super keen, so they do come in really early. And that's a personal choice of theirs. But like Laura said, it's really dependent on what you think is appropriate. And even for stuff that, you know, might take you to way over time at the end of the day, it's just a use of clinical judgment. Can this request wait for tomorrow? Can we just do these the next day? And it's a discussion with you and your team to really figure that out. How to triage the workload appropriately for the day. Yeah.
And I could probably bet that when you all start work, you will do more hours than you expect and probably more than in your run description. But by the end of the year, you've worked out what Anthony says, which is how to be super efficient, what does and doesn't need to be done. And you'll be doing the same or less than it in your run description. So I think people often find it really hard at the start, but they forget how much experience they're going to get so quickly, and they're just going to get so much slicker at the whole job.
I mean, your efficiency is going to be low if you don't know how to use the systems, or you're still getting used to them at the start anyway. Like when I first started, it took me a really long time to even figure out how to book a chest X-ray at this hospital. But now I can do it with my eyes closed in 10 seconds. So it's just a matter of experience and figuring that out.
One final comment I made is you get paid for orientation. That's really important to know. Doesn't mean you have to turn up.
That sounds good. All
They
right.
turn up because it's useful, Chris.
Yeah, of course.
But I also think it's really important, like we haven't said enough, there are loads of great doctors in Auckland, and I don't mean the SMOs. We have loads of great trainees, and so that makes it fun, and it's also people you can ask. So if you think that you're turning up too early, there'll always be somebody you can ask to say, am I turning up too early? Is this unreasonable, or is this the way that it is? And I think that's really important. It's a big place, so you can get a diverse range of opinion. You can work out where you want to sit on the spectrum.
I agree, Laura. Yeah, no, that's where I think the pre-vocational supervisors are very helpful. And also all three of the Auckland districts have education fellows. So they're generally either senior house officers or junior registrars who've been through quite recently, and they will know whether the hours you're working seem to be reasonable or not, and they can often be really helpful to put things in context. And another thing they can do very well is help you to speed up, to go through the process of learning, just to be a bit more efficient if they think that actually you could save some time by working through things in a different way.
Thank you. Oh, I see that we've got another question answered. So you can all check the answer tab if you want to have a read of them.
I love that though. So Anthony's given you, of course you can find out how much you're going to be paid. Here's the website that tells you. And I've done the, yes, of course, that's a very reasonable question. The principle is, of course, you should ask how much you're being paid. And the answer, I would say that across Auckland, there are different categories for payment of junior doctor roles. And essentially there are 6 categories of pay at the moment at house officer level. One is for a 9 to 5 week, and that's category F, and the other is for more than 65 hours a week, and that's category A. And we have runs across all of that. So it's really important actually. As a first year, I don't think we do any category E or F runs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shirley. Anthony doesn't either, great. But we do have, it's very different, the pay between an A category and a D category one. Anthony, Shirley, I'm sure you'll have something to chip in on this very reasonable question.
I think there is a lower category run, and that is spinal rehab at counties. I think that is E or F, but most of them are C category runs.
Yeah, oh, sorry, you go, Chris.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that most of the runs that are on sort of the general surgical and general medical side of things are category C. You'll hear of a few that are sort of a bit higher. One of them that is notorious for that, probably at the acute surgical unit at Auckland City Hospital, which is category A. Could be A+ even, but A is the top of the category. Yeah. You'll feel what a category A feels like.
I was just going to say that the collective agreements, they used to be called MECA, they're now called SECA, single employee collective agreements, are all available online as well for the two unions, and they're well worth a read. There's one for consultants as well, and I've read it assiduously myself. It's perfectly reasonable to know what you're getting into in terms of terms and conditions. There's a question I'm just looking at Laura's answering, but Otago graduates have not been students in Auckland. Will orientation include teaching on systems? Yes, definitely. Very aware of that. In fact, the teaching is pretty comprehensive. Sometimes the Auckland grads or the ones who've been TIs in the Auckland hospitals get a bit fed up because we go through it in so much detail. But we do consider that really important for the Otago grads.
I would also chip in that you won't be aware, but New Zealand's RMO, junior doctor workforce, is 40% international medical graduates. So actually, as employers, we have a huge amount of people who've never worked in New Zealand as students, or perhaps in any part of the health service, who come to work for us as doctors. So our orientation and induction process is essential to be robust for patient care. So an Otago grad is actually in a really good position in comparison to our IMG, our international medical graduate, who don't understand the system, don't have the lingo. As an immigrant doctor myself, I just did not understand what people were referring to for quite a long time. You know, it took me several years to settle into, you can laugh, Anthony, but it took me quite a long time to settle into the lingo of New Zealand.
Same.
Okay, and so in orientation and induction is absolutely crucial.
Thanks, Laura. Do we have anything else to add?
I do. I'm such a cheerleader for Auckland. Anthony, what are the disadvantages of Auckland? Just so that we're not presenting rah, it's fantastic all the way. It's really important to think about the downsides, because not everybody comes to work here. Everybody should. Anyway, you know what I mean? What do you think are less good here than you've heard in other places? Because I want people to come with their eyes open.
Traffic is probably my biggest concern. So if you guys aren't from Auckland and you are coming up to Auckland to work, I'd highly recommend choosing a place to live that is close to the hospital that you're at, because it'll do you wonders in terms of your health and well-being. Like, I've never lived closer to the hospital than I have this year. I'm literally a 10-minute walk away, and I am a completely changed person because of it. Because sleep is really important, and that's not something that you want to compromise. And you also don't want to spend an hour and a half in traffic after work going home when you're already exhausted, because that's just unsafe for you to have to do the same thing again tomorrow morning. So that's probably the biggest downside, I'd say. It is for Auckland. Yeah. It's a big place. There are a lot of people, so it might seem quite daunting initially. But just get involved, get to know people, introduce yourself, and you'll start finding your communities within Auckland quite quickly.
Car parking can be a bit tricky at some of the hospitals, but they are reasonably accessible with public transport when it's working. It should hopefully be fixed by next year. But yeah, there's a train station pretty close to Auckland and Middlemore, and there's bus stations very close to North Shore.
Mm.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Oh, we've got another question. Do you find you get much experience with procedural skills, or is the role more admin-based compared to other centres?
That's a really good question. Yeah, well, Anthony may be able to answer that, but yes, I think for example, in my hospital, Te Tokotumai, Auckland City, it is highly specialised, so you may get to experience procedures that aren't done in other places, but also there's probably a few more people above you who might actually be doing those procedures. But as I say, I would come back to the wide diversity of the region to say that Yes, it may be that you're not as close to actually performing procedures as perhaps you might be in smaller centres where there's only you as a house officer and a consultant. But there is a wide variety of roles available. And so I still think there's good opportunities to get procedural experience. We're mindful of the fact we've talked a lot about orientation and teaching programs and making sure you're well looked after, but we're also mindful that we don't want to wrap house officers in kid gloves too much, and we want you to definitely be able to do stuff. And so, yeah, we like to make sure that people do get experience of practical procedures. Anthony, could comment.
I think that we have a pretty good range. I mean, we have like Chris said, there's, CNSs, clinical nurse specialists who deal with a lot of the complex, like sort of access cases and various other things. But and our nurses here are very well trained. Like what I know at Auckland City Hospitals, they all are able to take blood. So I actually don't have heaps of experience in that, but I'm probably thankful for that. But I'll regret it at some point. But like there's still heaps of chances for you to practice bloods, you to practice putting in catheters, all sorts of procedures. Like I've had to go to theatre a few times to help with laparoscopic cameras. There's still good like opportunities available. You just have to make sure I guess you're putting your hand up for them or making it known that you're interested. I think that's a lot of the case for medicine, is that if no one actually realizes that you're wanting to do something, they won't be able to single you out specifically for it. So stick your head out of the sand and be like, hey, I'm interested in doing this.
And again, big variety. So Auckland City, big specialised hospital with regional and national services. North Shore covers a huge catchment area. So just lots and lots of work. Both of those hospitals have elective surgical centres. Middlemore, very, very busy hospital, but and serves a very diverse population and a fairly deprived population too in many parts of South and West Auckland. So huge variety. And then at Waitemata, there's also Waitakere Hospital, which is, I suppose, reasonably close to what a smaller or a regional centre might be like. Laura could talk a little bit about Waitakere.
Yeah,
but
I think you'll find Chris is underestimating the size of Waitakere. It sometimes has more emergency medical patients than either Middlemore or North Shore. It is a very different kind of hospital, but it serves a very varied population and actually has a huge amount of foot traffic through it. It just doesn't have general surgery, so people think of it as small, but it has up to 50 medical admissions a day, which is more than most of the hospitals.
That's a big hospital.
Yeah, outside Auckland. So don't underestimate the experience there. I can see there's a question here, and I've been trying to type but not finding the moment. That says, does being a house officer in Auckland help you get onto training programs in Auckland? And I think the honest answer to that is it depends, like with everything. So we currently generally have a shortage of junior doctors across New Zealand, so it's relatively easy to get onto most training programs. Not all of them, some are always competitive. The training program selection process is meant to be open and to recruit really widely. And that's because we need people to work in those specialities across New Zealand. And Auckland has 2/5 of the population and therefore at least 2/5 of the doctors. So yes, but I don't think it's the be all and end all, because a lot of people change their career aspirations in PGY 1 and 2 as well. So make your choice about where you want to live and where you want to train, not on your long-term future plan, because lots of people's long-term future plans change. I don't know what Chris and Anthony think of that. I'm sure they come from different perspectives.
I agree, Laura. Yeah, I think it's important to do well and thrive wherever you are and whatever you do. So I agree, it does depend, but yeah, I think go to where you're happy and where you'll be settled. And then I think the training hopefully will look after itself. But you're right, it's always helpful if you happen to have worked for and made a good impression on someone that might be on the interview panel or whatever.
I agree. And I think a lot of specific specialties like surgery or like anesthetics value having prior research. So being in the Auckland region where it's closer to the universities, and there's more, I guess, doctors around, which means more research opportunities. and more patients might be something that's worth considering. I know a few of my friends specifically chose Auckland City Hospital for its proximity to Grafton campus for research opportunities, but there's research anywhere and everywhere as well. That's just what I've gathered from a few of my friends, but it's not limited to just Auckland, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a centre of excellence perspective that I'll just gently disagree with. But absolutely, Anthony, I agree. There's research at all sites. Like we've got 3 major Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora districts. There is university presence on all 3 sites. They all have strong undergraduate clinical campuses. There are chairs, professors at all 3 sites. If you want to do research, you'll be able to do it at any of those sites. Just like if you want to get involved in teaching, you'll be able to do it at any of those sites. We all have PGY1 and PGY2 reps for people who are interested in leadership and management. Just the size of the place means that whatever your interest is, it's highly likely to be accommodatable, apart from things that are very rural. Even then, you could talk about how rural and urban communicate or are different. The advantage of being large is that you can cater to so many different people in so many different ways, which is what we aspire to do.
Cool, thank you, everybody. So we've come to the end of our webinar now. I know you guys probably have more questions, but you're welcome to contact ACE if it's regarding the application process, and of course the Auckland Region RMO unit, or Shirley or Ada if it's anything regarding working at the hospital. Right, so I'm going to close with a closing karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, hui e, tai kie. Thank you to all our panelists, and thank you everybody for joining. Thank you so much.